In this presentation, you will learn about evolutionist perspectives. In anthropology, as in any discipline, there is a continual addition and flow of ideas. Early evolutionism. In the early years of anthropology, Darwinism had a strong impact on theory. The prevailing view was that culture generally develops or evolves in a uniform and progressive manner, just as Darwin argued species did. It was thought that most societies pass through the same series of stages to arrive ultimately at a common end. The sources of culture change were generally assumed to be embedded within the culture from the beginning, and therefore the ultimate course of development was taught. Although Darwin's idea of evolution by natural selection was strongly challenged when first published, it had withstood vigorous testing and is the foundation of many anthropological theories. Definition. Herbert Spencer defined evolution as a change from an indefinite, incoherent homogeneity to a definite, coherent heterogeneity through continuous differentiations and integrations. Later, he modified this definition to mean that evolution need not begin with absolute homogeneity or heterogeneity. History of cultural evolution. The most influential evolution school of 19th century was called Universal Evolution, associated with Tyler, Morgan, and Spencer. According to this approach, the whole human society was understood in terms of a sequence of stages comprising of first stage of hunting and gathering, development of agriculture, development of some form of government, that is chiefdom or kingdoms, and primitive stages, and finally the emergence of industrial culture. The German scholar Clem made a compilation of customs to show how man had passed through successive stages of savagery, a tameness, to freedom. Auguste Comte has shown man advancing from theological stage to metaphysical stage to the positive or scientific stage. Theorists like Montesquieu proposed an evolutionary scheme consisting of three stages: hunting or savagery, herding or barbarism, civilization. Types of evolution: unilinear evolution, universal evolution, multilinear evolution, differential evolution. Evolutionism of Tyler and Morgan. Two 19th century anthropologists whose writings exemplify the theory that culture generally evolves uniformly and progressively were Edward B. Tyler and Lewis Henry Morgan. Contribution of Tyler. Edward B. Tyler was an English scholar who was an associate of Darwin, Galton, and other leading thinkers. He is often called as the father of ethnology. His outstanding work, Primitive Culture, offered the first full-length explanation of evolutionary point of view. The evolutionary viewpoint may be appreciated by quoting Tyler. By simply placing nation at one end of the social series and savage tribe at the other, arranging the rest of mankind between these limits, ethnographers are able to set up at least a rough scale of civilization, a transmission from the savage state to our own. As it is undeniable that humans have existed in a state of savagery, other portions in a state of barbarism, and still other portions in a state of civilization, it seems equally so that these here distinct conditions are connected with each other in a sequence of progress. Tyler maintained that culture evolved from the simple to the complex and that all societies passed through three basic stages of development, from savagery through barbarism to civilization. Progress was therefore possible for all. To account for cultural variation, Tyler and other early evolutionists postulated that different contemporary societies were at different stages of evolution. According to this view, the simpler peoples of the day had not yet reached higher stages. Tyler developed the theory of animism. He believed animism to be a dominated form of religion among the simplest of primitive society. Polytheistic religion implying belief in many gods, characteristic of agricultural societies, and monotheistic religion, belief in one god, of the most advanced societies. Tyler believed there was a kind of psychic unity among all peoples that explained parallel evolutionary sequences in different cultural traditions. In other words, because of the basic similarities common to all peoples, different societies often find the same solutions to the same problems independently. But Tyler also noted that cultural traits may spread from one society to another by simple diffusion, the borrowing from one culture of a trait belonging to another as the result of contact between the two. Contribution of Morgan. Another 19th century proponent of uniform and progressive cultural evolution was Louis Henry Morgan. A lawyer in upstate New York, Morgan became interested in the local Iroquois Indians and defended their reservation in a land grant case. In gratitude, the Iroquois adopted Morgan. In his best-known work, Ancient Society, Morgan postulated several sequences in the evolution of human culture. For example, he speculated that the family evolved through 6 stages. Human society began as a horde living in promiscuity with no sexual prohibitions and no real family structure. Next was a stage in which a group of brothers was married to a group of sisters and brother-sister matings were permitted. In the third stage, group marriage was practiced, but brothers and sisters were not allowed to mate. The fourth stage was characterized by a loosely paired male and female who still lived with other people. Then came the husband-dominant family in which the husband could have more than one wife simultaneously. Finally, the stage of civilization was distinguished by the monogamous family with just one wife and one husband who were relatively equal in status. Morgan's scheme places a lower stage of savagery as involving the infancy of man. Middle savagery starts with acquisition of a fish subsistence and knowledge of the use of fire. Upper savagery with the bow and arrow. Lower barbarism with domestication of animals. Upper barbarism with smelting iron and civilization. Morgan believed that there was no marriage in the earliest human society where people lived in animal-like promiscuity. Then there emerged group marriages, polygamy and polyandry marriage of one woman with more than one man, and finally monogamy. Monogamy, according to him, was the highly involved form of marriage characteristic of modern societies. As a matter of fact, some of the simplest societies like the Andamanese have had monogamy, whereas polygamy had existed among civilized and advanced societies. However, Morgan's postulated sequence for the evolution of the family is not supported by the enormous amount of ethnographic data that has been collected since his time. For example, no recent society generally practices group marriage or allows brother-sister mating. There are two main assumptions embedded in social evolutionism: psychic unity and the superiority of Western cultures. Psychic unity is a concept that suggests human minds share similar characteristics all over the world. This means that all people and their societies will go through the same process of development. The assumption of Western superiority was not unusual for the time period. This assumption was deeply rooted in European colonialism and based on the fact that Western societies had more technologically sophisticated technology and the belief that Christianity was the true religion. Critical evaluation. The evolutionism of Tyler, Morgan, and others of the 19th century is largely rejected today. For one thing, their theories cannot satisfactorily account for cultural variation. The psychic unity of mankind, or germs of thought, that were postulated to account for parallel evolution cannot also account for cultural differences. Another weakness in the early evolutionist theories is that they cannot explain why some societies have regressed or even become extinct. Finally, although other societies may have progressed to civilization, some of them have not passed through all the stages. Thus, early evolutionist theory cannot explain the details of cultural evolution and variation as anthropology now knows them. All evolutionary theories reflect the meaning of human history, growth, and progress. Cultural evolutionary theories have been criticized on the ground of their ethnocentrism and their indifference to the cultural diversity. Most evolutionary theories are anti-evolutionary, anti-historical, anti-adaptive, and are essentially teleological and represent the continuation of 2000 years of Western self-praise. Evolution was seen by these scholars as single or unilinear thread throughout history. It was rooted in the psychic unity by which all human groups were supposed to have the same potential for evolutionary development, though some were further ahead than others because of climate, soil, and other factors. Social evolutionists identified universal evolutionary stages to classify different societies as in a state of savagery, barbarism, or civilization. Morgan further subdivided savagery and barbarism into subcategories low, middle, and high. The stages were based primarily on technological characteristics but included other things such as political organization, marriage, family, and religion. Since Western societies had the most advanced technology, they put those societies at the highest rank of civilization. Societies at a stage of savagery or barbarism were viewed as inherently inferior to civilized society. Spencer's theory of social evolution, which is often referred to as social Darwinism, but which he called synthetic philosophy, proposed that war promoted evolution, stating that those societies that conducted more warfare were more evolved. He also coined the phrase survival of the fittest and advocated for allowing societies to compete, thereby allowing the most fit in society to survive. With these ideas, Spencer opposed social policy that would help the poor. Eugenicists used Spencer's ideas to promote intellectual and ethnic cleansing as a natural occurrence. 19th century evolutionists contributed to anthropology by providing the first systematic methods for thinking about and explaining human societies. However, contemporary anthropologists view 19th century evolutionism as too simplistic to explain the development of societies in the world. In general, the 19th century evolutionists relied on racist views of human development that were popular at that time. For example, both Lewis Henry Morgan and E.B. Tyler believed that people in various societies have different levels of intelligence, which leads to societal differences, a view of intelligence that is no longer valid in contemporary science. 19th century evolutionism was strongly attacked by historical particularists for being speculative and ethnocentric in the early 20th century. At the same time, its materialist approaches and cross-cultural views influenced Marxist anthropology and neo-evolutionists. Thank you for watching the presentation. Do like, subscribe, share, and leave your comments about this presentation or any other topics you would like to learn more about.